Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode here of PhotoXDraw. This is actually my first episode in the series, and I hope you enjoy it. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photograph that I've taken. Might have been a recent one. It could be one that I've done quite a while ago. It doesn't matter. It's a photo that I've taken at some point, and I'm gonna deconstruct it, start with basics, and then create characters or some type of artwork based on that photo. So it's more or less a learning series. It's a way to kind of get back to basics and use references and not be afraid to use references. I'm of the mind that use every tool you have as an artist to make yourself better. One of the big passions in my life is photography. I love photography. I love getting out into the studio and I love shooting models, and it's just having a great time. What you're seeing right here, this is a photograph that I took a while back, probably about 5-6 years ago. And I was in my home studio. We were doing a promo piece for a season's print ad. And in this particular case, the lovely model, her name is Emily. She came out into the studio, and I gave her some tasks of, hey, give me some fun activities for the summer. And so she's like, okay. And so she got a beach ball. And so then we started creating images like this, which is fun. It's great. It's entertaining. And as a character artist, I look at something like this and I think, oh man, this is going to be cool. I could totally see a character in this pose or something very similar. And, it's easy to use as a reference because it's shot on white. It's a studio shot, so the lighting looks really nice. The colors look really nice. So it gives me a really good idea. The expression on her face is fun. And so it gives us a very good base. So what we're going to do in this particular episode of PhotoXDraw is we're going to break down this image, the way that she's posed, in very basic shapes. We are not going to do any detail. We are just going to use this as a construction mechanism and give us an idea of where to position our details once we get all the structure ready to go. So this is a basic class. Hopefully I set the expectation just fine, and let's go ahead and get on with it. Now, eventually, as an artist, you're going to be able to look at a photo and identify a lot of things right off the bat, especially if you've been doing this for a while or you're very, very used to using life studies as a reference, and that you won't need to trace. I wouldn't say trace. It's not tracing. Use a photograph for reference. In this case, it's a digital photograph, digital drawing. But in most cases, you might have, you might have like paper, or you might have, some type of canvas or something that you're doing your actual artwork on. And then you have a photograph that you're using as a reference, or maybe even some kind of art book or pose book, or even a live model. Being able to transfer basic shapes over to whatever medium that you're drawing on is going to help you greatly in the long run. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is a very basic class, and we're going to look at this image in basic shapes. Now, basic shapes, we're talking about spheres, we're talking about cylinders, triangles, rectangles, squares. Very, very, very simple shapes here. Okay, this is not an advanced portion. We will get there, but we're just getting started. Okay, so I have my image set up here. I'm using Clip Studio. I'm actually a rather novice with this, with the touch screen. This is actually my first iPad. So this is a very interesting experience. I'm learning a bunch of new skills right off the bat. I've been a little bit about my art as I'm setting this thing up is I do a lot of artwork on paper. I've used to scan it in, and then I would draw it using Illustrator or Photoshop with vector graphics. I'd get all my lines and stuff, and depending on what the medium is, I would color it either on the computer, or I would do prints and then color it with, with marker or something else. But I would almost always use vector graphics for very, very clean lines. Now in this case, we're going to stick basic. I've got my layer here that I'm going to do my artwork on. This is going to be our basic layer. This is going to be our structure layer. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and name it structure. Okay, I'm going to name it my structure layer. And this means just basic shapes. So I dropped the opacity down on my photo. As you can see here, I dropped it down to about 40. Make sure I'm on my layer to draw. Excellent. And then just to make sure that I don't do anything with the actual photo itself, I'm going to go ahead and lock it. Okay, so we have our opacity here at about 40%. Now, we're looking at this as a complete pose. And we need to identify a few things right off the bat. First, I'm going to use a very, very light pink to identify an action line. Now, it's important to identify your action line because it grounds your character in the scene. It also gives some type of momentum, some movement, and it allows you to understand where your exaggerations can come from. Because right now, this is a very grounded pose. This is not an exaggerated pose. This is not something that shows a whole lot of action. It's fun, but your character might be wanting to do something else. But we're going to base all the character movement off of this image here. So our action line is to identify, okay, where the curve is. Super simple. Identify your action line. It is a curve. It's projecting outward. Her pose is looking up here somewhere, right? So we understand what's going on. Now, let's build our structure here so that we are angling outward. I'm going to jump over and make my color a little darker. Now, keep it simple. Start with a sphere. Our head is going to be a sphere, right? Right. So, basic shape. Basic shape, right? Once you get your basic shape done, let's anchor it. So we're going to create a cylinder for the neck. Okay, there's there, bop, cylinder. Sometimes it helps to create some of your structure lines. Okay, we're not doing a whole lot of detail here. We just want to know where some of this stuff is, right? Like her eyebrows, we'll get to that in a minute, and maybe even a little indication on where her chin is. But nothing big. Maybe even here, we'll do a little circle here for her ear. And we know that the side of her face is going to be somewhere over here, right? So very, very, very basic. Now, one thing that I like to do when I'm creating structure is I want to identify where the pivot points are. So we know that the neck is going to pivot here, right? And we know that the neck at the base is going to pivot somewhere around here, right? It's going to bend a little bit. We also know that the shoulders create pivot points. And then we also know that down here at the tummy, that is a pivot point as well. So we have to kind of estimate, because she's wearing clothes, so we're going to have to estimate somewhere where her tummy is going to be. So it's going to be somewhere in this particular area. We're just going to create that as just a basic thing. Now, if you've been paying attention and you kind of understand the basic shapes, we have 3 points here. What are we going to create? You got it. Ding, 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 ding. A triangle. So we create our triangle here. Again, keep it basic. I'm not worried about perspective. I'm not worrying about any of that. I'm not worried about any kind of rendering at all. I'm creating basic shapes to give me an idea of what's going on. Now, Obviously, there's going to be connectors here. So there's going to be another triangle that's going to go up here to the base of the neck and where the shoulder meets. Okay? So we got that. Give us our basic. To give you an idea, or to keep the idea of your reference in check, you want to create some type of volume with some of your joints. So the shoulder is not a dot. It's, it's a pretty decent size mass on your arm. So I'm going to go ahead and create a circle here to indicate that. Okay. We'll get to the arms in just a minute. Again, we're staying very, very basic here. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is just one particular way that I can see that might help somebody else in this particular situation. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do volume. You can do a bunch of different cylinders and stuff, and then you can do your basic shapes and put cylinders and volumetric items on top of it. But in this case, we're just getting the basic structure down. So think about your pivot points, right? So we know that we're moving down the body. We know that there's going to be a pivot point right around here, right, to create the hip movement. So we know that the hips are going to be in here somewhere, okay? There's going to be another pivot point. It's over here on the side, on this other side over here. It's just going to be, we just really can't see it. Next at the knee, we're going to have a pivot point there. Ankle, we're going to have a pivot point there. And then there at the toes, we're going to have a pivot point there. So what we can do is we can create lines going straight from the hip to the knee, from the knee to the ankle, from the ankle to the base of the toes, creating a rough constellation. Now I'm going to get into talking about why this is important here in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and do it. On the other side, we're going to have basically the same kind of thing. So we're going to create our circle here for the knee. We're going to create our circle here for the ankle. And then we're going to create a circle here at the toes. So we're going to go ahead and connect our lines. If you're new to art or even life drawing based off of a photograph may be very intimidating, and I totally get it. Hopefully this is going to help you at least a little bit understand that you don't have to worry about all these little details right off the bat. Once you get your main structure down, then you can go back and refine it. I like using a different color for my structure lines because it's easy for me to understand which colors can go. So if I'm doing my structure on pink and I'm doing my general render on blue and then I'm doing my final inks on black, then I know what colors I can get rid of later on. So then when it gets down to the hips and the pelvis area, there's a lot of shapes that go in here, but basically it's an inverted triangle. So if you were to look, you can go ahead and create your, connect your lines here a little bit here, and then there's going to be a triangle here and then here, right? So that's going to be your basic shape going into this. As you start to render it, you can start kind of identifying where the waist is going to be. You could probably maybe even switch over the colors to kind of give you an idea on giving you some reference points. Say if I go over to, say, blue or this green color or something, you can kind of get an idea of if I'm going from the edge of the breast, maybe even right in here might be the waist, and then that is going to flow out towards the hip. And then over here, we know that this is going to be on the back side. That's going to go probably open up into the hip there. And then circle around the buttocks at that point. This gives you an idea to kind of look it's not a life studies photograph, so we have to guess at where the body proportions are. And of course, based on your character, it might be, she might be skinnier, she might be bigger. It doesn't matter. We're guessing at this point to continue building our structure. So let's get back to our bright pink. Right around there. Okay. So when it comes to the pelvis, a lot of people have trouble with the pelvis because of the perspective. Now, as we can see here, based on the photograph, is that our horizon line is going to be somewhere around in here. It was pointed about in the middle of her body. So it can definitely be up to you on where you want to start building your perspective. But all in all, we know about the top of the hip is going to be somewhere around in here, right? And so we're going to create our circle in here somewhere. Open up into here, create our triangle. That's going to go back out and start forming the buttocks, right? And then we know about the rib cage up at the top. We're going to build just a little bit more structure in here. We know that the rib cage is going to be right around in here somewhere. So we're going to create very basic shapes. And then we're going to connect to give us an idea here. Okay, and we're going to guess that the belly button's somewhere around here. Okay. Now, chances are this is a little wide. You know, it's probably more here. But triangle, right? Okay. Start getting your structure lines going on so that you know where things are. Now, back to basic shapes. When we talk about the legs, what are legs? They're large ovals. You can also do cylinders. I like to do ovals. Knees are circles, right? Then we got more ovals when it comes to the calf muscles, right? If we come over here and look at the heel, again, it's covered by a shoe, but we get an idea that a heel is a circle. And then the foot, check this out. If we go from here down, another triangle, another triangle. Okay, super easy when it comes to basic structure. Now, that's a pretty pronounced heel. We'll get to that on one of our next episodes. So let's go to the other side. Again, oval, circle, oval, circle. We're going to create actually have a rectangle here, right, because of perspective. And then we've got another rectangle there. And you can indicate, you know, where you want the toes to be. That's fine. But, you know, the idea is still the same, is that you still got these triangular type shapes, and you got circles in between, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so we'll move on. Finish out the arms and the hands. Now, in this case, you know, your structure lines can get really mucky here because her hand is foreshortened in front of her shoulder, which it would be fine. You know, it's fine for character drawing and stuff. But you may want to move that hand outward. So if you wanted to move it out, it's not that difficult. Your pivot lines and your pivot areas are still going to be the same. So still indicate, we know where the shoulder is. Let's indicate our point for the elbow. Now, the elbow obviously is a circle, right? It's a joint, and it's going to move. It has mass. But the point gives me a point-to-point idea on where to structure the bones. So it's not anatomically correct. It's more structurally correct. It gives me an idea. Now, as you get more and more used to drawing, you'll modify your bone structures and the way that you use your reference points. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this hand out. So our original point is here, okay? We're going to move that out to say over here. Okay, it's just a very, very small arch if you were to imagine this hand moving out this way. So we're going to go ahead and line up our lines and then line up our line this way. Okay, that's going to create our wrist, right? So based on the shape of our forearm here, it looks like a triangle. So we go out, in, out, in. Now again, this is just structure. It's not meant to look really pretty. And let's use a cylinder for our arm back here in the back. Remember, we're moving our hand outward, just so that we can see it, just for this purpose. Okay, the hand, by looking at the hand, let's zoom in a little bit here. By looking at the hand, you can kind of see that we have a circle here, we have a circle here, and then there's the thumb, right? We're going to create a little rectangle there. And then we've got fingers, right? The fingers that are going to pop out. So we're going to create very crude looking fingers based on the angle. And then there's another one probably somewhere back there, right? So that gives us our structure. Very, very basic. We're not worried about detail at this point. So let's jump over here to this other arm. Okay, so we know that the elbow is back here somewhere. And so we decided that based on the shirt, we're going to push that tummy back a little bit. We know that there's a pivot in here. So we're going to make our line. Okay, I'm going to keep our lines relatively clean. So I'm going to put it behind our chest structure. Okay, and then there's our circle, right? And then we're going to angle it up into here, which creates our wrist. So we look at the shape. There is a cylinder shape here. There is a cylinder shape here. That is a triangle. There's a circle there. Oval, long oval, long oval, and then there's a finger in front of that oval. Okay, so she's lifting up or she's bouncing something up. So the movement is going this way. Your curves are probably going to, exaggerate a little bit towards the upside. Okay, so there's our basic structure. I mean, it's super, super basic. It's not meant to be very detailed. But let's take a look at it. We know that the floor, I'm going to go ahead and indicate where the floor is, somewhere right in here. And then we're going to go ahead and turn off our reference layer and see where we're at. That's generally it, right? Pretty good. See, there's our photograph, which looks obviously much more detailed than what we've got, but that's the point. So we have this now. We know where she's looking. We know where the object is, right? It's indicated right up in here. We know where she's looking. We know where some of the structural lines are. We know where her ear is. We know where her shoulders are. We know where her neck is. So we can start adapting this particular structure now to how our character is supposed to look. And then we can adjust proportions based on, on our personal preferences. Now, I am not a huge stickler on keeping your proportions 100% right all the time. Characters and people were not built to proportion. We have some proportions, but some of us have features that are different than others. And I have no problem exploiting that in character drawing because it's those little things about the character and about the style that makes them memorable. So don't get bogged down in realism. So if I were to do one of my characters based off of this particular pose, there's a lot of things I'm going to change. A lot of my characters are very anime inspired, so there's a lot of elongated features. There's, they typically will have smaller bodies, exaggerated eyes, very exaggerated hair, things like that. And so this just gives me an idea on where to start. So on the next episode, we're going to take a look at our structure here, and then we're going to start detailing it a little bit, start bringing in some blue lines, and create some form. And then we're going to start adding some details, and then we're going to use this to build and draw a character off of it. So thanks for joining. I've been your host, Tim. This has been PhotoXDraw, and I'll see you guys next time.